Hey everybody, my name's Blake Cadwell. I'm the co-founder at Soundly.com, and in this video, we're going to be reviewing two different hearing aids from Sony. I'm actually wearing one in each ear just for the sake of demonstration. Don't recommend you do this at home. But on one side, we have the Sony CRE-E10, which is a Bluetooth streaming rechargeable device, sits in the ear, looks kind of like an earbud. And then on the other side, I've got the Sony CRE-C10, which you might not be able to see very well because it's intended to be an invisible style device. I'll pull this out and see this is a very tiny device, sits inside the ear canal, and it uses a disposable size 10 battery, but of course is very discreet inside of the ear. We're gonna review both products, talk about the pros and cons, and also talk about where they fit in the overall hearing health landscape. So if that sounds interesting, let's get into it. All right, before we dig into each of these products and talk about the pros, the cons, the quirks, some of the setup and the app, it's worth noting that both of Sony's hearing aids are within our Soundly Choice collection, which means you can actually purchase these products directly on Soundly.com. Now, you can buy these hearing aids in other places, Best Buy, for example. But when you purchase through Soundly, one, you support our work, but you also get a consultation upfront where we will talk to you about whether this is a good product or maybe you should consider something else. You also get a guided unboxing. So once the product arrives at your home, a member of our team will get on the phone with you if you would like, and we will walk you through every step of the app process. And as we get into this review, you'll see why that's important, especially for these Sony products. It's a high quality product, but there's a lot of steps and some quirks within the app. So we're here to help make that process easier and get you going. Of course, you get free 45-day returns, and our prices are the same as what you'll find in other retailers. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the background behind this product. Because obviously you know Sony. Sony's the third largest maker of headphones in the world. They also produce movies. It's a media giant. And until about a year and a half ago, Sony was not in the hearing health space. In fact, they'd never made a hearing aid before. What changed is that the FDA created new guidelines which allow hearing aids to now be sold over the counter for those who have mild or moderate hearing loss. And the result is that Sony eventually released both of these products. Now, they didn't do it alone. They did it in collaboration with one of the largest hearing aid manufacturers in the world called WS Audiology. WS Audiology also makes brands like Signia and Rexton and Widex. So this is one of the most respected hearing aid manufacturers. They really understand how to amplify sound, how to bring down background noise, and even the little things like how to create something that sits comfortably in your ear for 12 hours at a time. This partnership is really unique in the landscape between a giant consumer electronics company and an endemic hearing aid manufacturer. So the result is what I have in my hand, these two products. And really, if you look closely at these two products, which we're about to dig into, you'll find that they look a lot like Signia products, which are also on the market. The C10, which is the invisible product, looks a whole lot like Signia Silk, and the E10 looks a whole lot like a product called Signia Active. Now, Sony and WSA work together on the app components, but in general, you're getting an audiology grade sound and an audiology grade product from an experienced manufacturer. We definitely like that, and we like that that works out some of the kinks that some of the newer OTC brands have found in terms of how to fit people and how to properly manage hearing situations like background noise and other complicated settings. While the C10 and the E10 come from the same company and they use the same smartphone app, there are a lot of differences between the two products. So we're actually gonna break this review into two sections. First, we're gonna talk about the C10, which is the invisible product that sits deep inside the ear. Then we'll move on to the E10. I'll walk you through the setup process, the style, some of the things that I like and don't like about each model. So let's start with the C10. The C10 is clearly meant to be an invisible hearing aid design. Now, if you take a look at the hearing aid itself, it sits deep inside the ear. One thing to note is it has a little battery here. It's not rechargeable. Instead, it uses a size 10 battery, which you slip in every 3 to 5 days, depending on how much you're using the hearing aids. Once you close that battery door, the hearing aid is officially on. Now, you do get this carry case that comes along with it, but the carry case is not doing anything to charge the hearing aids. It's simply to carry them around if you don't want to wear them, want to throw them in your bag, or put them on your nightstand. You'll change the batteries every 3 to 5 days for this particular product. Now, when it comes to comfort, I find this product to be extremely comfortable. Now, I'm a big fan of the ear tips that Signia uses on their hearing aids, and these clearly use that same ear tip style. I just find it's extremely comfortable in the ear. I forget it's there after a little while. I like this style of ear tip on a receiver and canal device, which sits behind the ear with the wire going up over the top of the ear. And I also like how it feels in this particular in-ear device. Now, once I put this hearing aid in, if I turn to the side, you're really not going to notice it. If someone looks directly down your ear canal, they might see something's in there, but this is not a product that 95% of people are going to notice. And I think this is the #1 pro to this product. It's extremely discreet and extremely out of the way. It's also worth noting that if you often wear glasses or you have to adjust your hair, you're not going to feel that noise that you often would get if you're wearing a behind the ear device, which then when you touch it, the microphones are gathering some feedback. The feedback suppression is extremely strong on this device. When I put my hand over my ear, I'm not getting any squeal. I'd have to work pretty hard to make these products squeal. Again, this is probably a product of Sony partnering with WSA, and WSA's worked now for decades on feedback management. So really strong fundamentals with this product. And when it comes to overall sound quality, I've found that this product has really audiology grade sound. It's able to manage background noise situations. It's able to manage sudden sounds, which is really important to me, the slamming of a door or setting a dish down. It's able to compress those sounds quickly, so I'm not getting an uncomfortable sound quality. Now, is the sound quality of the C10 as good as the leading receiver and canal device from an audiology clinic? Not quite. I wear receiver and canal hearing aids that come from the prescription channels, and I find maybe a 10 to 15% difference in the toughest background noise situations. So my receiver and canal devices have a little bit more room for the microphones, more room for processing, and in general, I think they're able to manage the more complex settings a little bit better. But again, that comes in a completely different style, and the device itself is a lot larger, sits behind the ear. So if you're looking for a product that sits inside of the ear and is really virtually invisible, this is an incredibly strong option on the market. Now, there are a few downsides to this invisible product. The first one is that you will need to change batteries every 3 to 5 days. And if you have dexterity issues, it might be a little bit challenging because the batteries are quite small. If you don't have dexterity issues and you don't mind changing batteries, it's really not too big of a deal. The second challenge or downside to this product is that it does not stream Bluetooth. Now, this is standard for in-the-ear devices. None of the invisible products on the market today stream Bluetooth from your phone, but this product does not stream. It won't stream music or phone calls. It's simply acting independently as a hearing aid, amplifying outside world sound. And the final downside is that this hearing aid is not waterproof. We do not suggest that you splash water on it or get into the shower with it. Certainly don't swim with it. You're generally going to need to keep this hearing aid dry. All right, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the setup process, because this is where the magic really happens with the Sony hearing aids. Now, as you can imagine, when they arrive at your home in the box, they are not customized to your individual hearing loss. And if you're just learning about hearing aids and hearing loss, every person's hearing loss is a little bit different. Mine is a cookie bite, meaning I hear pretty well in the lows. I drop down in the mids, which is typically where human speech is at. And then I come back in the highs, so the sound of birds or other high frequency sounds. Every person's hearing loss is a little bit different. So it's important to get a product that can customize to your particular configuration. Now, the way that Sony handles this is through their smartphone app. So you'll download their app, you'll set up an account, which takes a couple of minutes. You'll need an email and a password. Once you've gone through the setup process, you'll be asked to choose a product. You'll get to choose between the C10, which is the one we're talking about now, and the E10, which we'll talk about in a moment. So imagine you choose the C10. Then you're going to go through the process of pairing your hearing aids to the app. They'll give you a couple of instructions. The most important pieces are you need your volume up, because it's going to send a high frequency signal to actually talk to the devices. It's not using Bluetooth. It's using this high frequency signal to send commands back and forth. So you need to make sure your phone volume is up. And then you also need to follow the instructions on the app quite specifically. So it'll tell you to open the battery doors. It'll tell you when to close each one. And then you'll listen for a tone in your left and right ear. Once you have that all complete, you'll go through a hearing test. The hearing test essentially will present you with a number of beeps. You tell the app how many beeps you heard, And after going through the process for your left and your right ear, you'll apply that program to your hearing aids, which will essentially customize them in the way that an audiologist would to your particular hearing loss. Now, there's one more important step before you get into the general hearing aid app, and that is to set your master volume. Now, one thing I noticed is that the Sony CRE-C10, or this invisible product, come in just a little bit quiet. So when you get to this screen where you're being asked to set your volume, I suggest turning it all the way up or close to all the way up. You'll have a chance to adjust your volume later, but essentially if you don't set this master volume high enough, the hearing aids may not give you the amplification that you need in order to match your particular hearing loss. So this was one quirk that I found in the app setup that I had to play with a few times. Just make sure you get that volume up pretty high when you're going through the initial setup. Once you're in the app, you'll have the ability to change the volume. You can also make some minor adjustments to the frequencies, bringing up the bass or the treble. And of course, you can go back and you can adjust that master volume if you click on the 3 lines at the top left corner and then go back into the setup mode. All in all, the setup process for the C10 is not too bad, but you will want to carve out 15 or 20 minutes. And again, if you purchase directly through Soundly.com, we can join you on a call where we help walk you through that entire process. All right, let's move on to the second product, which is the Sony CRE-E10. Now, this product is rechargeable. It has 26 hours of battery life on a single charge, and of course charges these things back up so that they can go more than a full day without needing to put them back in the case. Really amazing rechargeable battery. Now, the E10 also streams audio, but only for iPhones. So if you have an Android device, you will not be able to stream through these products. You will be able to use them, but you simply won't be able to stream phone calls or Spotify or podcasts. Now, one of the most notable differences with this product is that instead of being invisible and sitting deep inside the ear, it looks a lot more like an earbud in your ear. It's definitely very visible. Now, it has a modern look to it, but it's a very visible product and it sits open in the ear. Now, part of the advantage to that is that you get the rechargeable batteries, you get the streaming capabilities, and you also get just a little bit more sound quality. I talked a few minutes ago about how the C10 is maybe just less advanced than some of the premium products on the market that sit behind the ear. The E10 is somewhere in the middle. The E10, because of its expanded size, has a little bit more sound quality to offer. They're able to space the microphones out. There's a little bit more room for processing power. I find that it's close. It's very close between the two products in terms of sound quality. And if you're set on an invisible product, I'd probably recommend looking at this on a form factor basis versus then purely looking at it on a sound quality basis. Unlike the Sony CRE-C10 or the smaller version, the E10 or this earbud version is waterproof. It has an IP68 rating, which means you could literally put it underwater about a meter for 30 minutes, pull it out, and it should be just fine. Now, we don't really recommend doing that. We certainly don't recommend swimming in these hearing aids, but if you do get them wet, you accidentally get into the shower with them, you're walking through the rain, or you drop them somewhere, they should be absolutely fine. So it's a little bit of peace of mind for folks who live a more active lifestyle or are around water a lot. The setup process for the E10 is similar to the C10. Again, the customization is going to happen through the app. No one's programming the hearing aids before they send them to you. They'll come out of the box unprogrammed to your hearing loss. You're going to use the smartphone app in order to program them to your particular configuration. Now, the way this happens is, again, you download the Sony Hearing Control app. You'll select the E10 instead of the C10, of course, and you'll go through a similar setup process. Now, it's worth noting that the E10 is just a little bit more complicated to pair than the C10. The first step that you'll need to take is to go into the accessibility settings of your phone. You'll choose the hearing aids and pair them the way you would a traditional pair of hearing aids. Then once you're in the app, you'll go through a similar process of pairing the app to your devices. Now, if you're having trouble, there's one additional step you might need to take based on your particular phone to pair these hearing aids to your app. We'll give those details below. So if you're having trouble in the mid portion, check out the description below. We'll add in some details. Again, if you purchase this product through Soundly, you can also get on the phone with us and we'll help walk you through the entire process. Once you're paired and once your hearing aids are synced up to the app, you'll go through a very similar hearing test. It will present you with tones. You'll tell the app how many tones you heard, and then the app will program your hearing aids based on your particular hearing loss. The app itself will look very similar. You'll have volume control, you can make some frequency controls, and in general, that's about it. You can retake the hearing test at any point you'd like. Now, it's worth noting that you can open up Spotify now that your hearing aids are paired, and you can simply stream music or a podcast or even phone calls through the E10 hearing aids. All of this provided you have an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you can still go through the whole app setup, but you won't have access to streaming. Okay, so those are the details on the Sony hearing aids E10, C10, both fantastic products that we definitely stand behind. We believe are really good for a lot of people, especially those folks who want an in-ear device. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, where do these sit in the overall hearing aid landscape? The first thing to note is that they're over the counter, meaning you're going to be doing a lot more of the setup yourself than you would if you went into a local clinic. Now, the products themselves are also a lot cheaper, right around $1,000 for both pairs, give or take the sales that are running at the time. Now, that's a lot less than what you'll pay on average at a local clinic for somewhat similar technology. You might pay $4,500 or $5,500 for a pair of Signia hearing aids, which is made by the same manufacturer. Now, of course, you're not getting the care, and that's part of the reason that it's a lot less expensive. Now, if you were to walk up to me on the street and ask, what should I get for my first pair of hearing aids? There's a good chance that I would actually recommend a receiver in canal hearing aid. That's a traditional hearing aid that sits behind the ear, wire that goes over the top of the ear, and a speaker that sits inside the ear. And the reason for that is that the sound quality tends to be just a little bit higher. You get access to Bluetooth streaming, and it can be really comfortable to wear. Now, the C10 is nearly as comfortable as a receiver in canal. The piece is just a little bit larger that sits inside the ear, but you also lose that brushing sound of your hair or your fingers if you're touching behind your ear. I think this product is really strong for someone who's just getting started, and if you can figure out the setup and get used to the product, it's something most people are never going to notice in your ears, and it will definitely give you a lot of boost. If you're set on an in-ear device and you like the idea of going over the counter and saving some money, really the only comparable product in the market today is Eargo. Eargo has the Eargo SE at $1,600, so a little bit more. And then they have a $2,500 or $2,800 product called the Eargo 7. The biggest difference between Eargo's products and the Sony C10 is that Eargo's products are rechargeable. They come with this case that you can drop the hearing aids in and put them back into your ears. The Eargo products are also just a little bit smaller, although I find that the C10 sits slightly deeper in my ear, so they end up looking a whole lot the same from the outside. At the end of the day, we think Sony's products are a fantastic option for anyone who has mild or moderate hearing loss, especially if they're looking for something that sits in the ear instead of something that sits behind the ear. We hope this video has answered some of your questions about this product, and we wish you the best in your research.